Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In this video, I'm going to talk about amortization and sales. United in this market are going to be looking for shedding a lot of players from the squad in order to try and build a more focused, more viable squad and get the money in order to rebuild. Without Europe, without the extra revenues from Champions League or Europa League, United are in a situation where they must sell in order to spend beyond their ordinary budget. Now, how these sales work is really dependent on each individual player in their situation. What they can sell them for, if it's even possible to sell them, is all strongly dependent on a specific set of circumstances that apply to each, including how much they can reinvest. But as well, United will have to take into consideration the potential of hedging some of the gains they might make from their sales, depending on how much is done, against how much value they can add to the squad versus keeping some of the remaining profitability, keeping some of the remaining gains for future windows. Given there's no guarantees in this world and in this league of any future European revenues, should United miss out on Europe again, they will, of course, have to keep buying players to get back into Europe. And so you will need to have the ability to maybe maintain some gains in that respect. But the majority of what they will gain from selling, they intend to reinvest in order to buy very good players. They are willing to lose and let go of a lot of players, more than they're willing to buy in order to have the squad be a bit smaller, composed of good players, less waste. And in that instance, there may be a circumstance where there's money left over that can be used towards future windows, even January, where if United are in a situation where there's an injury, or United are in a situation where they're pushing strongly on multiple fronts in cups, and making that push for the top, and they need extra firepower to get there, they have some flexibility to do a deal in that case. We've seen how the inability to do so can, of course, be detrimental to the team overall. So let's go through it. I'm going to explain amortization and talk about how it applies to each individual player and their situation. Amortization is basically this, just simple explanation. A player's purchase is spread out over the contract up to 5 years, cannot be longer, cannot be 9 or 10 or 8 like Chelsea were doing. That rule was changed. The cost hits you every year. So for example, if you buy a player for 50 million, it costs you 10 million per year for 5 years. Don't worry about how it's paid. The things like we paid upfront, we paid over 3 years. Like Cunha, for example, buying him within 3 payments and 3 installments for his release clause doesn't matter. It still will be amortized over a 5-year period. It is not how you're paying it. It is just how it's showing on the books. Specifically, this is for PSR, profit and sustainability rules, and their calculations. When you sell a player, their sale price is counted against the value immediately. So an example is United bought Di Maria for 60 million pounds. Over spreading that out, it cost them 12 million per year. That's just 60 divided by 5. 1 year later, they sold him for 44 million pounds. So 60 million was the original price. They took 12 million. It cost them 12 million year one, and that's taken away from the 60. They sold him for 44. That's a 4 million loss. He still had 48 million remaining in amortization on his value. 60 minus 12, 48, because it had been 1 year. So when they sold him, they actually took a loss of 4 million. However, each year he was costing them 12. So the year that they sell him, they take a loss of 4 million, but over that year, they don't get that 12 million cost. It's sold, it's counted against it, you take the loss, it's gone. So they immediately get a 4 million loss, but they don't get charged another 12 million that year. So they get an 8 million gain from where they started. So less than where they were at the beginning with Di Maria, where they had 12 million per year to spend. They have 8 million per year to spend. So that's why it's not great when you have to sell a player for a loss, even though it's not as bad as it may appear up front. You still do have the ability to spend to replace them. It's not meaningless to sell said player, and sometimes it can be a good thing. So let's go through the likely sales. Jadon Sancho, left winger over at Chelsea. purchased for 73 million, 4 years gone, only 14.6 remaining on July 1st of his amortization. There is the potential for a wage payoff issue because he's earning somewhere like 200 to 250 a week, excuse me. And I'll discuss how that wage payoff works. But the minimum United would have to sell is probably in the 5 to 15 million bracket. If they sell him for 5, they're going to take a 10 million loss. However, they're going to save that 14.6 million, so they're going to come out a little ahead versus keeping him. So it's worth selling him even lower, but ideally they get at least 15 million. In a great world, we get that 25 million clause from Chelsea, which is still possible as of today. It hasn't been decided, and he was a key part of their final push for Champions League. He started in that game, and you never know. He may have helped earn them the ability, the financial ability to make that deal and keep him, but he also has to agree a contract with them as well. So a minimum cost of 5 to 15. Anything more than that would be even better. The potential sale of him at 25 million does give United pretty significant space because we get to write off that 15 million a year, and that could mean we can go buy a decent player. That one's very valuable because it's not just a one-time profit, it's the yearly cost being gone, although we're probably planning for it next year, so you have to think with that as well. Antony at right wing, 82 million pound purchase. Oh my God, 3 years gone. He still has 33 million remaining. This presents a problem for United. The estimated minimum price that we could even possibly sell him for is 25 million. They want 30 to 35 so that they can fully write this off. That would mean we take no loss and we get to take his 16 million a year off the books. But a small potential loss would be offset by the saved amortization, even if we sold him lower than 25. But realistically, we want to get at least 25 million for him, take an 8 million loss, save 16, still come out 8 ahead. There's interest from Betis, Atletico, and maybe Leverkusen with his best friend Ten Hag going over there, who made us pay this much money for him, hopefully. If there's the potential that we do something like a loan plus obligation for 16 million, then we could write it off however we want. We could write it off right away, take the 16 million loss, if that's all Betis can afford, take the 16 million loss immediately on the books, but save the 16 million. We break even this year. Next year, we have a lot more space. Marcus Rashford, left wing. 0 amortization. Of course, we did not purchase Marcus Rashford. However, we owe about 45 million pounds in wages, and he is entitled to them. He has a contract. We gave him the contract. If Rashford goes to another club and gets around 150,000 a week, we're likely going to be on the hook for 15 to 20 million in wages. Minimum fee realistically is 25 million to not take a loss here. But unfortunately, that wouldn't do much for us. 40 million seems feasible, though, for a player of his quality. The option we had for Aston Villa, that's the price we're going to look for. And that will give us very likely about 15 to 20 million in transfer spend to be done there, profit rather. And again, more than, it's not as big a sale as you would imagine because of that wage issue. I don't think he's going to be getting the wages we gave him anywhere else right now, given the situation. But he is entitled to them, and it is not wrong for players to be entitled to and ask for their wages. It's the same reason Harry Maguire didn't transfer some years ago to West Ham. Not his fault, not his problem, not Rashford's fault, not their problem. We gave those contracts out, and we owe them. So Villa, Barcelona, and others. Villa probably coming off the table now, given that they're not in Champions League, but Barcelona and others are interested. Barcelona being the dream move, and they could probably pay those kind of wages, at least 150,000. Garnacho at left wing, similar to Marcus Rashford, 0 amortization on him. Negligible wages. He will get a rise on his wages wherever he signs, so we don't have to worry about any wage issues. The club would like to get 50 million pounds. Huge spending space can be gained from this. Chelsea and Napoli among the interested parties. Then there's Bayindir as goalkeeper. We paid 4.3 million, 2 years gone, 2.55 amortization is left or so. Negligible wages. If we can sell him for 3 million, we won't take a loss. We'll be able to save a little million or two there. There's interest from Turkey. So just a way to make a little bit of space in the squad. The likely sales, the guys we've covered there, um, all totaled, probably save us 25 to 30 million in yearly amortization, which is really big. Um, a likely gain of around 90 million in profit, but that's going to be offset by the potential for 25 to 40 million in wage payoffs, as well as, taking some losses here of 10 to 15 million here and there. Conservatively, we'll probably end up with, if we can sell these players, about 60 million in one-time profit, the majority of that being from Alejandro Garnacho, and then a 15 to 20 million yearly savings on amortization in year one, which will go up in subsequent years as well after the loss year from Anthony. So that's pretty decent spending. I mean, in theory, in 1 year, you could take that and go spend buckets and buckets of money, but you have to be a little bit more reasonable about that. What this does is it gives United the space to buy a 50 million or so player. Garnacho being the straight line profit thing there, that third forward. We can go get that third forward for 50, 60 million, and we're probably not super capped on the money on it. Like it's not 50, or if it's 55 we're screwed. We can spend that money. It also gives us space to buy probably another player after that. However, when you're banking on one-time profit coming in, we need to be certain that utilizing the extra expense, the extra profit, is going to help us get those European revenues back. As otherwise, we'll need to use some of that profit to offset losses in future years. Otherwise, we'll have that situation where in the next year we have to find profitable sales just to break even, and that is a situation we don't want to be in. So there's risk versus reward here. Basically, what I'm saying is, if after Mbeumo they decide, hey, let's say it's Mbeumo, right, a third forward in there, they say, okay, we could go spend the money on another player. Can we get somebody that we feel will bring us to Europe or not? They don't want to just spend it just to spend the money. They want to have a small and focused squad. So maybe they say, hey, Ederson is our dream guy. If we can get him into the midfield with that extra money, and we think that's going to make a huge difference towards our ability to get into Europe, then let's see if we can convince him. But it's money they don't have to spend, but probably should if we can, and spend it well to help us get into Europe. And that way, the regular revenue, we don't need that profit. We can get it via real revenue to not have a problem. So Mbeumo is probably the top target for utilizing these sales for spending. Does that make sense? If we can, once we sell some of these players, probably Garnacho, but even like if we get a good deal done with Sancho, a good deal done with Rashford, they could fund it too. But we have all of these kind of adding up to allow us to make that kind of third signing, and that's really where the focus will be. Um, then there's the guys that are unlikely to be sold. Now, it doesn't mean they're unlikely to leave in some capacity, but unlikely to be sold for different reasons, and I'll explain why. Or difficult, let's say. Not because we don't want to move them, but difficult. Hoyland, purchased for 68 million pounds or so, 2 years gone, 38 million or so remaining still at this point in time. The math on that isn't 100% correct, but it's right around that number regardless. The estimated minimum price that we could sell him for is 30 million. Again, we could take an 8 million loss because he's on low wages. We could take the 8 million loss, save on the 15 or so in amortization, or 14 in amortization, and still come out a little bit ahead. The wages wouldn't be an issue. So yeah, there is interest from Inter. There is interest from others in Italy. But he could be sold for 30 million. It may be plausible that somebody in Italy takes him for 30 million, that sees that his abilities would scale back better in that league where he started. He's on low wages. He wouldn't need much of a bump, and he could do much better there. So this one has potential. It's going to be hard. Someone's going to have to pay 30. He's in a weak position. We're in a weak position negotiating. So, a lot of clubs may be looking at it and saying, well, why even pay 30? He's not working for you. Why would we even do that? People may be looking to go for a loan or something like that. And say, all right, well, let's take a loan on him and see how he does, and we may have to accept that and then sell him in the following year if he performs in Italy. But this would be the ideal situation, if we can get 30 million, and I think they would be willing to sell him at around 30, but we need to get that. Onana, difficult because of, again, the fee. 44 million, 2 years gone, 27 million or so remaining. He is on pretty substantial wages too. Not massive, but substantial. The minimum fee is 25 to 30 million. Because again, those wages, there might be a wage payoff. So we may not be able to take much of a loss on him, and there's only 2 years gone on his contract. So, there could be substantial wages in play here. If Saudi come in, the wages factor wouldn't be a problem, and then we could take even 20-25 million for him and come out ahead on the deal, where we can get a loss of 5 to 8, but gain 9, get his wages off, and enable us to buy an affordable goalkeeper. If someone from Europe comes in, we're probably going to have to cover some of the wages, and that means we're going to need 25-30 million on the fee and to not take a loss. Shaw at left back. Well, he's no amortization, but he is on big wages. He still has 20 million in owed wages left over 2 years. Essentially, nobody's going to give him those kinds of wages. So we may have to offset some of that. We'll probably have to pay off 5 to 10 million in wages if he were to leave. And that's for a player who's regularly injured. That's going to be hard, a hard sell to move him on, to get him out. That's, I think, the major difficulty that we're going to have in this case. But realistically, 10 million would do it. We'd take no profit, but we would get wages off. So the maybe sales where we want to sell them, but they're going to be difficult. Likely no one-time profits to be made. We can see potential gains on amortization, but with some wage payoffs and our losses, we may just see a small amount of savings in year one. In the long term, very good for us to move these players on, and we could see huge savings in further years and unlock big spending next year. But this year would likely be wage savings for the most part. But that can also, of course, unlock spending. A lot of these players, though, wouldn't necessarily have to be directly replaced, or we're already planning to replace them with our budget. Hoyland, if he goes, doesn't need to be directly replaced because we're already buying a striker. So it's just savings, and whatever can help us for the future. And the point to that is that when you go back to the earlier one, I'm trying to explain like all scenarios where we might have excess profit, but there's a risk in spending it. If we can get some of these maybe sales done where we're reducing our expense next summer and getting our bottom line much lower in the future, then we can spend that money. Then we can spend all that money that we're gaining from those bigger sales. And so that is the main challenge at this point. So it wouldn't fund big transfers, but it could help us get good cost transfers on low wages, like some more young signings, or use the money that we're gaining elsewhere with less risk, because we're shoring up our future wage bill to be lower, our future amortization to be lower, and setting ourselves up for the future better. This could be, though, how we get a depth center back, another goalkeeper, maybe a Dorgu type, maybe one or two of those. Or again, to spend our other money. Realistically, it helps for balancing the books on major deals and save space for future windows. So maybe this is how we get someone like Vanya coming in. We might be able to do that again with the earlier sales if we can get them all done, but this would help us do something like get Vanya or Lamens or that keeper, or or another center back or something to come in. Then there's the unlikely / impossible sales. A lot of, some recent purchases. I'm not even specifically targeting these guys, but obviously we're not selling Dorgu. We're not selling Euro. Xerxes seems nailed on to stay because we need a striker, and he's actually quite liked. But I'm just looking at, the other names and impossibilities here. Ugarte, 34 million left on amortization on decent wages. I don't think there's any hope in hell. Not that we're even trying. He hasn't been listed, despite what some people may say. He hasn't been listed as they're trying to sell him. If someone offered us 50 million, would we take it? Probably. If someone offered us 40, 45, would they take it to rebuild? Probably. But the likelihood of that with everything, very unlikely. And the same goes for others. For Casemiro, we still have 15 million in amortization. We still owe him 15 million in wages. So we would require a 15 to 20 million fee minimum, and that would just pay off his wages. That would just cover his amortization. We'd have no profit, no gain, and we'd still owe his, potentially have to pay off a chunk of wages because he's not going to get that kind of money somewhere else. So realistically, this is a difficult one. If we got 15 million, we'd have no profit. It would save us the 15 million. We could pay off a chunk of wages, but it wouldn't fund a replacement, so we'd need money elsewhere. We already need midfielders. It's difficult. I'm not saying they wouldn't be willing to sell him for 15 to 20 million if it came in, but they would hope that they can make some savings on the wage payoff as well in that. Mount, 33 million left, huge wages, can't get on the pitch for more than 2-3 games at a time. That is a challenge. He's very, very unlikely to go because of that. There's just, I don't know who's going to make an offer. A loan, in this case, something like a loan is possible though. If someone wants to cover his wages, he can play elsewhere, save us money. We'll see. We may need him though as well. But health is a concern. Delict, similar to Ugarte, but he's on even bigger wages. 30 million still remaining, big wages. Unlikely anyone's going to buy him at this point in time. Then there's the big ones. These are the potentially transformative sales that we probably don't want to make, but we'll see. Bruno, only 6 million remaining. Ahmad, 2 million remaining. Massive, massive profit on two high value, good top players at this point in time. Either sale between 60 to 100 million would immediately fund, 1 to 2 huge signings justified by the savings and the squad impact. So I'm not saying we should sell Ahmad under any circumstances, mind you. In my personal opinion, he's unsellable, but he does have a price. Everybody does, and he does have a price. And the sale of Ahmad for 70, 80 million would give you the ability to buy huge in the market from the profit. The same goes for Bruno. And obviously, I think Bruno is the one that is more under consideration. If you can get 80 to 100 million for Bruno and you have all that money, you can buy whoever you want in the market this summer that is available. You can buy 2 players. You can spread it around. If you're going for Mbeumo and you're getting your forward sorted, well, you can buy another. You could buy Mbeumo. You could buy Mastantuono. You could buy a midfielder. And the overall value to the long-term build of the squad is there. And that's why it's being considered. The impact on the play of these players is noted. The money would be spent if they were sold, not pocketed, not saved for later. It would be spent to say, how do we make sure we build a squad that is better with the money that is spent? And it has to be considered. It is hard to replace Bruno Fernandes, no doubt. But at the same time, when you're building for the future, if you can build a round out the squad and solve all your other problems this summer, and add an attacker and that third attacker on top of it, then it has to be considered. And that's the risk first reward, and it's up to him. Do we sell him, make sure we get a third player, so we have Cunha, a striker, Mbeumo, and we can go for 1 or 2 midfielders, maybe that big one in Wharton or something like that, and really round this whole team out this year to where we're putting the finishing touches on it by next summer? Maybe. It has to be considered. But those are the big ones. Those are the ones that make potentially a huge impact on United's window. And those are the ones where they change the plans. The rest of what we described, we can see step by step how it's going to have the knock-on effect to the next signing, the third forward, the midfielder we want, the goalkeeper. These are where you add transformational players to the squad and are maybe shopping in different markets. But in Ahmad's case, I don't think that would be worth it. You'd have to go buy a wingback in that case right off the bat. But, in Bruno's case, due to age and all of that, it's why it's at least being considered or thought about. So, in summary, the phase 1 would be the base budget departures, Cunha and a striker. We can afford that now, someone at Delap's price. The sale of Alvaro to Madrid may add enough to go stretch a little for Gyökeres if we can convince him. That's phase 1. We've got Cunha done. Delap, we'll probably find out this week. Gyökeres, we'll probably find out this week. Then there's phase 2. If we can make further sales, we can fund that right 10, that Mbeumo or the Dibbling or Mastantuono, and maybe a goalkeeper, maybe a midfielder, but there's risk in that unless we can get those other sales done. Then there's the full throttle one, where let's say, major unlikely sales like Casemiro would unlock the ability to go for a midfielder, or similar, but huge sales like Bruno or Ahmad would unlock the massive purchase ability, but unknown as of yet. Maybe someone like Wharton, who is viewed as a top player, but potentially unobtainable. Do you just shoot for the moon and rebuild your entire team with that money? And that would be phase 3. That may not happen. There may not be a phase 3. It's maybe completely non-viable. phase one and phase two are certainly the major focuses step by step, but it's just something to think about in terms of how we evaluate the sales moving forward and where we are in this window. So it's going to be an interesting summer. And after phase one, we're really going to have to we're really going to have to evaluate where we go from here, piece by piece, step by step, based on the departures to see what can be done and how it affects our ability to move in the market. So, interesting summer, but has potential to be massive, has potential to be anywhere in between. All right. That's what I have for this video. I hope it's enlightening, interesting, so you can think with who we can sell, how, what would be needed, and where each of them are at this point in time. And hopefully, United can do the business, because those outs are going to be, as we can see, as important as anything for us to really nail down the squad. But there's potential here, man. There's potential to really do something. And I'm not even just talking about Bruno. I'm talking about with the other potential departures to really rebuild, to have three forwards, to add to the midfield, and create a whole new core, to get a new goalkeeper where you just have a new team, and that's what I would hope we can get done. All right. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.